And then I guess you've got the first one up.
Yep. I think we have only this agenda. I'm not so sure Pedro will join or not, but I can also just talk about it, and Pedro, if he joins later, he can add more colors here. So I was planning for the solution validation, very quick one for this concept waiting for. And as Pedro pinged some of you already, we found some gaps in this concept while we are translating into this concept into the high fidelity prototype. And these are the questions that we had and we discussed in our one-on-one with Pedro. So we don't have very straight answer for all of this question yet, but I think it would be worthwhile if we revisited those questions first, and then if we have some answers, then I think we can move on to the actual solution validation, including high fidelity mockup. So, hi Pedro, so he just joined. I think he can add more comments after all. So the possible next step would be, I would start mapping the any possible use cases for the scenario, including any edge cases. And then, okay, this is the possible user flow at the moment, and this is the proposed user flow if we are introducing this waiting for concept. And if we are adding more details in the design, including the lo-fi mockup, and then we're ready to conducting the solution validation. And in this step 3, before that, of course, I'd love to get more feedback on Catherine's, because the planning is really rough. Like, we included some of the very short usability studies there. So I'd love to get some more feedback. And then corresponding to the feedback that we have in the actual solution validation, I think I will need to revise this design a little bit and then ship it to the engineering team. And the rough estimation for this timeline would be around a month, including everything. But I think this is good timing to revisit this concept and fill this gap, and then make sure we are going to the right direction before we ship this feature. Do you have any other questions, or Pedro, please feel free to add more. I just explained this.
I mean, I think my biggest question is, like, it sounds like the pieces that there are gaps on are interactions. But that doesn't feel like it means that we shouldn't necessarily do work on this front. And you know, we have a capacity discussion to, like, get through and figure out what we have capacity for performance stuff. But what I would actually expect is that, like, in 13.11 originally, or 13.10, what are we in? 11, we were going to do the filter part of waiting for. That doesn't feel like we still shouldn't or couldn't do, I guess. And then even some of the other pieces feel like maybe they're not unchanged. There might just be enhancements to the interactions. And so I guess I wonder if, like, should we stop work? Because it's likely 13.12 we have some capacity. 14 and 14.1 we maybe don't, given, like, how long it'll take to get through investigations for performance work and where that is. And so, yeah, I don't know. I guess I just want to get a sense of how we feel about stopping work or not stopping work here.
I can hear what you're saying, but I think it's still important, as the solution validation also validates some of the interaction here. So my initial concern was, like, if this interaction is not well defined, then our outcome from that research might be not correct. So I think it's better to just step back, just one step back, and then rework. But I don't think, as you mentioned, like, it would be like crazy radical change. It would be just additional stuff included in the details, but I'm still not so sure. So when the board and my initial exploration is ready, I'll make sure to share with you and Pedro and Catherine so that we know where we are heading to. So I'll try to speed up on that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, my understanding is that those parts that I mentioned where we need some way for people to find the merge requests where their attention has been requested or that someone is waiting for them. I think that's part of it, and we will always need to solve it, which in turn means that we need to save that indication and attach that indication for the user and save it in the database and say, Pedro, this MR is waiting for you. Like we need to save that somewhere, and we would need to filter merge requests based on that. I don't think that's changed. So that issue that you were mentioning, the filter waiting for filter on merge request list page, I think that's the issue, right? I don't know if that's only backend or front end. It's both, but I think that's still needed, and I don't believe that anything about that will. I mean, I don't think that the core concept behind that will change. Maybe the filter name could change. Maybe the labels in the navigation dropdown could change. But I think what Sanjung was trying to say is that we're mostly trying to explore is what does the user do to get merge requests on other people's lists. Is there any automatic behavior? How does that automatic behavior work? And how does the interaction work not only in the user interface, but also in the backend? Like what is the logic that we need to accommodate to put merge requests on that list? I think that's what we're still exploring. Did I, let me know, Sanjung, if I said okay. So I don't know if, yeah, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I think that makes sense. I think, if there's a possibility that the language changes, right? We don't call it waiting for anymore. It may actually make sense to not do any of the code because we'll probably like end up naming a database table waiting for or something crazy. And then we'll always have this like complicated code in the back end. So maybe it's fine to punt down the road for now.
Yeah, for example, one of the things, and Sanjung, you can add more color to this, but to me, like one of the things that Sanjung shared with me is that she was showing this, like the current design to one of our product designers. And one of the feedback that they gave was, why do the buttons like to call, like to wait for assignee or to request review, they look the same, they have the same icon, but they have a different label. One of them says wait for assignee and the other request review. And it's interesting because for the wait for assignee, it's linked to the waiting for concept, but the request review is there's a gap there. I mean, you can infer the association, but it's not as clear as wait for assignee. So do we need to change the labels of those buttons so that they are the same? Like, for example, I don't know, request their attention, or I don't know, something else that can encapsulate and have the same consistent thing. And maybe, as you're right, it could affect how the filter is labeled, and we would then need to change how the database is set up. Sanjung, yeah, do you want to expand more on that?
Yeah, and Kai, thank you for bringing that up, because I never thought about database naming, and I think that should affect, of course, for sure. And as Pedro mentioned, like I really got interesting feedback around like those, why are we using same icons for different action? And I think how it looks like on the current design, in the design proposal, maybe as a first-time user, they are confused, because so they can actually request review for the reviewers, which is related to the review status. And also we can also make an action button just beside the assignee, which will occur waiting for assignee. So I think we're kind of mixing this review status and also waiting for assignee status. I think it's kind of like mixing concept to the first time user. So I think it's worth to revisit, maybe just changing the icon. And as Pedro mentioned, I think we need to relabel, or I'm not so sure, I'm just thinking out loud, but I think it's worth to double check those hypotheses first and then move on to the actual solution. Just to be safe.
Okay, I think that's fine. Makes sense to me.
Yep. Thank you. That was my agenda.
Yeah. Does anyone have
what
anything
about
else?
Yeah, I was just quickly going to ask, how much capacity can we expect to be allocated to performance?
I don't know. Like every day or every month around this time, planning has snuck up again. If only it were predictable and on the same schedule. I don't know. I think I've asked. The problem we have right now is that we don't know what we're gonna go do yet, if that makes sense. Like one of the things that we're still waiting on is defining. We've got to like get our test large MR, and so I imagine much of what we'll be spending 1312, and why, I've got a little hesitation, but I think all the reasoning is sound, is we may not be pulling a ton of 1312 capacity to go address performance, because we might still be trying to like build the test environment and do investigations. And I don't know that, whatever, 8 engineers are going to do investigations. There might be like 2 or 3, which leaves like this other work. The flip to that is that we've got, because we lost 1311, essentially, we've got all of the 1311 work that we were going to do that moved backwards into 1312. There's some bugs and some other things that we were planning on addressing that we didn't get to because of database work. So we may be able to fill that. I imagine we'll fill that capacity back up anyways. So I don't know. I don't think we'll allocate a ton in 1312. I would expect us to allocate much more in 14. Just given that hopefully we'll have like a plan and some concrete things that we're going to go do. Right now, we don't have any concrete things. We've got a lot of stones to still turn over, but we don't know which ones are the good ones yet.
Yeah, that's good enough for me. Yeah, anything. I mean, I'm still trying to understand what I can do to help, but I think at this point, my understanding is that it sits in the engineering court and in the quality team to come up with whatever it is we need to come up. Do you think there's something that's from the UX side that we could help
I don't know yet. And I will say that because I've sort of been sitting watching, waiting on like that 95th, 99th percentile data to come back to sort of get a sense of where we think what a large MR looks like. And then I think as a group, we just need to make some decisions about the things that we won't have in there, which I know you suggested like file size and types of files like binaries and others. And we, without going, back into Gitaly, I don't think we can get any of that. And so we'll sort of just know that there was like this many lines changed and this many commits. And that might be all we know.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah.
And so we'll need to
ambitious.
Yeah, we'll need to make some judgment calls, I think, about what makes sense. And I think that'll take all of us to sort of like agree that we think this is a reasonable but large MR, and then have that and then trickle that backwards to quality and other people. I think one of the concerns that we've all, I think, long had with the quality test is that there's one that has like 30,000 commits and one that has, like 10,000 files, but like those are different things and like not really representative. And like I think what I would like is for us to set like, we believe this is reasonable. And also like, if you tell us that you've got something that's outside of this, we're not gonna we just need to sort of be able to make it clear, at least for the time being, that we're not addressing sort of things outside of that. And so so that's a long-winded way of saying, no, I don't think there's anything that we need for UX right now. We need that first set of data to come back from either the data team and Nick or just Nick, depending on who gets the access faster, and then start building out from there.
Cool. Yeah, makes sense. Yeah, one other thing that I wanted to ask is how do you feel about the different process now that we're experimenting with creating shared key results within the code review group instead of having that top-down approach to setting OKRs? And yeah, I think, let me rephrase. I think my question is how good or bad do you think this OKR that we're setting as a code review group, and also the other OKR from the UX department that's like generated a lot of discussion in Slack, do you think that is helping you more as a PM, or do you think that's just creating more frustration and confusion about how do I do my work as a product manager?
I liked our group coming together and picking the things that we thought were important and that we thought we could drive an impact on. And I thought that thread, if you look at the issue that we had and you look at all of the collaboration in there and how things got bounced around, like, I think that is exactly the intent of what that process was supposed to do. And I think we did a good job. And then we also got to a point that we needed to get to. And I will say we sort of got to a point we needed to get to, without other outside influences, although towards the end, all we sort of got was outside influences. And I think that's probably where my frustration in the process is we set an OKR, and then because it sort of then became a focus area across the company, that top-down thing started to happen, and they sort of conflicted with ours in a way that was like, UX talks about merge request performance, and they talk about usability things, which is logical and makes sense. right? Like as you go up the UX chain, I would expect that like the nuance of like usability and performance gets a little lost because it is nuance. And so like you started seeing like sus issues, or not sus, but like async critique issues and all these things that are sort of like, yeah, we're not disputing that those are good things to do, but we're disputing that like we as a group have a finite amount of like capacity and we have to pick one thing, and this is the thing that we're going to pick. Products saw the same thing. Like it happened on the product side, they started doing it. I have not seen anything from like engineering, but I'm sure there was like that, and so we've had to like go and sort of refight all of those fights and get to a point where we're like, no, this is the one we're doing. This is how we have defined it, and this is all our group is committing to. I'll say the UX one was particularly confusing because there was like 3 things in there that all sounded like they were code review. And I think anyone outside the group could not have read that and thought anything different. And yet, you know, we sort of knew that those were going to be handled by other people and that some were not engineering efforts, but like that wasn't explicitly clear. And so then those got brought up in like the same sort of performance conversations about MRs. And so I don't know. I wished, I'd love to know how other groups dealt with their like shared stuff. And if, you know, if you did your shared OKRs and it didn't become like the CEO's OKR, like you probably were fine and like it wasn't a thing and it didn't cascade down. But when it became the CEO's OKR, everyone sort of was like, oh, we've got to do something to show Sid that we're like dealing with it, versus saying like, oh, code review is like, got it, here's the one, like we're just gonna use that. And like we're all, and like all the other functional groups being like, we're okay with that as the one. And I think that didn't happen yet. But this is the first iteration of this sort of process, so maybe it gets better.
Cool. Yeah, I was just concerned that it was, yeah, just I mean, in a way, you validated what I'm going to say, but it confused things a little bit for everyone and for you. Yeah, I just want to make sure that we're not making your work even harder than what it is by trying to help, you know, because I mean we're assuming positive intent from everyone, but you're right, it's just a confluence of so many things at the same time and so many people trying to focus on the same thing that it leads to confusion and duplicate work and having to fight again for certain things that were already settled.
Yeah, I will say I don't think my work was harder by anything this group did. I think my work was marginally more stressful for a period of days because it was trying to realign everyone. And I felt like at a low level, the people who are involved and have to do the work, our group, we knew what was going on. It was just then like translating that back up, because there were multiple conversations happening across every single department with an inconsistent group of people from all the groups. And I think we were slow to recognize that like I was having to have that conversation and Michelle was having to have that conversation and you were having that conversation with Michelle, like as a group, and like, or with Marcel, like everyone was sort of slow to be like, oh yeah, I'm having to tell my boss and they're having to tell their boss and they're having to tell their boss. And then we were sort of like, wait a minute, we just need one talking point and one link and everybody just say the same thing. You know, we just, and then I think that helped too, when we were sort of like, no, this is the one. And now Michelle did a great job creating the epic, and we've got like the epic that's like, this is the one. Everyone go here. You ask anyone, like, the default answer out of our group just needs to be go look here. That'll have the latest information. And we shouldn't try and like have anything that's not that. And I think that'll help that process too. And we've gotten there. And I think this was a learning experience for all of us, particularly for product who has never been involved in OKR planning out like below a VP level.
Yeah, I'll add the link to that epic in the agenda. Cool. yeah,
Awesome.
that's what I wanted to know. Yeah, that's all I had, and I'm glad that we're focusing a lot on this. And yeah, it's interesting because I was talking with Marcel earlier today, and that our group doesn't focus a lot on monthly active users compared to other groups. And I mean, we have so many things to do, but we could focus a little bit on adoption, and we're not focusing on adoption. And I think that's fine. But it's interesting how other product managers would like to focus even more on MAU, and with these OKRs, just performance and usability and all of that. It seems like the way we're usually measuring product managers is through the monthly active users, and these OKRs are not aligned with that somehow. So it's interesting.
Yes, MAU is an interesting metric for sure. I don't know if it's the best, but it's interesting. I've got to jump. It was good to see everyone. I will see some of you tomorrow. Short week this week, Friends and Family Days Friday, in case you had forgotten and hadn't put it in. But yeah, get ready for 13/12.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye, everyone. Bye-bye.